So I'm doing an intro video on what my philosophy and sort of guiding principles are in my experimentation that I'm doing here in the garden. There's a book by Masanobu Fukuoka called The One Straw Revolution, which you should check out if you haven't. In it, he declares that if you really take a look at how we grow food, most of the things that we do are unnecessary. And so he tells the reader that introduces them to a concept called do-nothing farming, where you do very little. The idea is that you kind of want to just let nature take care of itself as you grow. And so I'm checking it out. This is the sort of thing that people read about, and then they want to know, well, so who's doing this? How do you do it? What does it look like? I mean, there's lots of different versions of it, but I would say there's some primary guiding principles, and they are no weeding, no tilling, no fertilizer, no compost, no prepared compost. Anyway, compost can kind of happen on the surface of your soil. Am I forgetting anything? Anyway, that's the basic idea. So let's get the first one that you probably seems the most surprising is no weeding. And let me clarify that, because it's not that you won't ever sort of remove things, but our sort of guiding principle is that to sort of gently and elegantly shift nature in our favor by doing as little work as possible for the most amount of output, yield, right? Whatever it is that you're wanting from the system to come out, and how it comes out. And so it's not that there's going to be no work, but that this should be, inherently, it should be something that's fun and easy to do. Humans need exercise anyway, right? People drive in a car so that they can go work out at a gym. And here I'm proposing that you can kill two birds with one stone by getting in good exercise while also growing good food. So this is my general idea. As far as what I'm doing, a big part of what I do with these annuals is saving seed. And so Fukuoka, talks a lot about food forest and things like that. The idea that you can plant stuff that's perennial, that will keep coming back. A forest of plants that give you food, and that's great. And that, is actually pretty easy to do. There's not much you really need to say in terms of technique there. But where things get interesting and also a little trickier is in dealing with annuals. And Fukuoka is famous for doing a no weed, no-till grains, and getting two grain crops per season, doing barley and rice. I'm doing that here as well. I'm doing barley and corn. There's some barley drying. Anyway, so that's doing annuals, though, is a process of kind of tuning in the genetics to your garden or your growing system or your sort of habits as a gardener. And by saving seed, genetically diverse populations of seed year after year, I've seen that you can tune the system in. You will select for, you're basically building your own landrace to grow in your own garden by saving seed. And by letting these varieties pollinate among each other and then continuing to select for traits that you find desirable. And so with that, I get away with quite a bit without doing very much weeding. As you can see, I let stuff kind of grow where it comes from. I throw out a lot of seed and get lots of volunteers. Animals seem to scatter seeds for me. I'm always seeing stuff pop up in a place where I would never have thought to sow seed. So on a certain level, it's kind of beyond your control, and that's okay. But I say utilize the life forms that are living, right? Utilize those mammals that you see crawling around, and you should see them crawling around. I do implement a little bit of cheating in this regard from the Fukuokan way, in that I do use not prepared compost, but prepared homemade fertilizer. This is from the Korean jadam technique, which is certainly worth checking out as well if you are interested in doing more kind of industrial style agriculture, but in an organic way. I would check out Young-Sang Cho's book, Jadam. But so I use Jadam liquid fertilizer, which is basically just plant material submerged in water, which then the plant material dissolves into the water, and I pour that onto my soil. Most of the time, pretty undiluted, actually. And so anyway, yeah, it's I do sort of spot fertilization, and then I also do more kind of general fertilization. And by that I mean I will just put down a bunch of fertilizer in a place where nothing is growing, knowing that the mycorrhizal network of fungus that's in the soil will distribute things to where it needs to go. This is my hypothesis. Fukuoka basically said something similar, that you don't need to, you can be quite general with how you fertilize, and you can fertilize in spots, and that it will get spread around. I think I read him say that. I think I read that he said that somewhere. So anyway, welcome, and feel free to kind of check things out as I go through the season. Just documenting what's going on here, while at the same time talking to myself, working out my own thoughts, working out new ideas, trying to just observe nature without making any sort of verbal judgments. Here's an example of that. I was growing soybeans, and as you can see, they are getting pretty eaten up by something, but that's all right. As you can see, they're still growing, and after a certain point they get too tall for whatever's eating them. I suspect it's probably a rabbit. There's some carrot seed that I planted a while ago. Carrots have been notoriously tricky, and here they are coming up. Anyway, so this is an example of looking at something and saying, "Oh my, this is getting eaten up." But in the end, I'm looking for something that hopefully won't get eaten by whatever it is that's eating it. And I don't really need to know how that's going to get accomplished, because I can sort of trust in nature, right, and the nature of DNA to do what it does, and that we can, in a sense, use nature to perform calculations with DNA by using large genetically diverse groups and asking questions like what kind of plant will survive in these conditions. You select for the traits that you see in nature, grow those in a group, rinse and repeat. This ties into Joesph Lofthouse's modern landrace and the work that's being done by a lot of people like him, seed savers who understand that you can really tune in what you're growing to your local conditions by saving seed, growing out what's called a grex, which is a genetically diverse version of whatever you're planting. So if you're planting melons, say, you would plant as many different versions of melons as you can next to each other and hope that you get a genetically diverse population of melons. Then you save those seeds, replant them the next season, and then after about 3 rounds of this, you start to see really sort of locked in and tough plants, that you get what you select for, and that you can subject these plants to all kinds of survival of the fittest, and that you don't need to know how it's happening, but you will see that it does happen in terms of plants adjusting to your local conditions. So this is the goal, and also for it just to be fun for you. The rabbit just jumped out from under this cloth there. I'm trying not to use cloth in the long run, but it is kind of fun. I have it, and I guess I'd rather all this plastic not go to waste. But I try to adhere to Fukuoka's idea of not being a petroleum person. Okay. So here's a second year of a bunch of watermelon growing out, again in a grex. And a grex then becomes a landrace once you start really picking for specific traits that you like, seeing what does well in your conditions. So there's a lot of experimentation, a lot of cool things that can happen without really knowing how and why they do happen, but that you're experiencing nature sort of take care of itself, that we are just tipping the scales ever so slightly in our favor of whatever it is we're trying to do. Here's an example of that. Just a little ring of grass around 2 things that maybe need a little TLC, a little head start so that they can get up out of the weeds. That's the general idea.